What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of BurnDown. This is a little bit different format than a what's happening video. What I'd like to do, strike while the iron's hot, fill you guys in a little bit on the behind the scenes and what I can remember from Rocky Mountain Race Week 2021 1.0. So I got my little cheat sheet list of some of the things that happened, and I'm just going to kind of ramble. So if you guys are interested on my thoughts, how I feel about the trip, how it actually went. I know I put videos up, but it got real rough there for a while, lack of sleep and the whole nine. So let's just go over it real quick. If you guys have a minute, you can listen to me ramble. I'll kind of let you know what it was like, what to expect, and then if we're deciding to try to go back and do this thing again. So first and foremost, before we get started though, big shout out and thank you to every single person that was a part of my journey. Thank you to all the sponsors. I'm not going to sit here and try to ramble them off because I know I will forget somebody and I don't want to be that guy. But each and every single sponsor, all the main ones you guys see, and the people that were behind the scenes, thank you very much, because everything, it just worked out perfectly for what we had going. So without further delay, let's jump on into it. So day one, well, previously, before even day one, I wasn't really making videos. John came out here. He's from Georgia. He flew out like 2 days before the event. When I talked to him about going to the event, one of my main concerns was to travel there and home. Obviously, the event itself is pretty crazy, but I'm in Southern California. It's about 21 hours or something drive, 22 hours, whatever it's supposed to be, that Google tells you. And I was like, man, I don't want to go there all the way alone there and then home. So he agreed to come out here, and then that way too we could both practice packing the trailer, bringing all the stuff and doing all that fun stuff. So John actually showed up. I kind of finished the trailer up while he was here. We packed it, we loaded the truck, made sure everything kind of fit. So he helped me with that. We ended up packing the wheel bearings, and then I ended up putting carpet in the car because I was going to run the hot rod class, but in the True Street class you got to have carpet. So I wasn't sure what we were going to do. But the reason I chose the 10.0 time frame for my car is I didn't have enough time to get a license and to get the cage certified. So my cage should cert to an 850, and then when I have a license, that will be the determining factor of how fast the car can go. So right now it's 10.0 because that's all I have safety for, essentially. So that's why we were picking 10s, if you guys were wondering there. I had somebody ask me like, hey, your car's obviously faster than that. Why are you basically like sandbagging? Well, that's the reason. So if you were wondering. So anyway, John flew out early. We got stuff ready. Realized that I'm not good at upholstery. We basically like spray glued the crap out of each other, trying to overlap and just get some carpet in the car. So if you see it, yes, I did it. And yes, it's terrible. I think I found my Achilles heel when it comes to car building. Upholstery is not my deal. So got everything ready. We got out there. Everything went without a hitch. We got into day one. So day one was in Great Bend, and we got in, we teched, kind of did the whole thing, kind of get the nerves out of the way, meet and greet. I met some people out there that, had seen me on the internet and stuff and got to shake some hands and talk. And it's really easy going on day one. Everybody's car runs, you're all there, everybody's excited, right? So the pressure hasn't even started. It's just a good time, you're hanging out. And then you start running. So we started running at Great Bend. It was a little behind when we kind of started. We were supposed to start a little bit earlier. Then we kind of noticed throughout the day as we went, like they kept bringing people in. Well, it turns out pretty much everybody that showed up, they let them all in. And it was like over 300 cars, and we were only supposed to be slated for like 200 or something, 2 and some change. And I'm sure the official numbers are out somewhere, but it was over 300 cars they let in. And in doing so, it basically, to get everybody a run, essentially, by the time the track closed, they extended the time the track was open as well. But everybody only got 2 runs for the most part, right? So I made my first pass. It was a 10.06. Basically, fresh, tune, everything. We just sent it down the track, ran 10.06. So I came back, left the tune up the same because I knew the air quality and stuff, that we just cleaned up the tune a bit. Actually, Holly did, not gonna lie. So Holly did some work, cleaned my tune up a little bit, and I just ran the same thing back. And it ran a 9.85, and I didn't even tell you guys, I wasn't even like terribly excited. I was excited to go that fast. I don't think I realized exactly how fast I went, because that's the fastest my car's ever gone. But then I had to decide what to do. And so technically the first pass I made, it was a 10:06, and then I thought I would just kind of back it up and see where we're at. By the time I ran my second pass, it was super late, and then it went too fast. So obviously my only choice was the 10:06. And because everybody only got 2 hits, they weren't doing round robins and trying to get like flat 10:0s and stuff. I thought I had a pretty good chance at the 10:0 class, because it was like either try to run 10:0s in hot rod or run, 10:0s in the 10:0 index class. So that's what I went with. My first hit put me in 3rd place, and we did pretty good. But what I ended up doing was, because I was so late at the track, and then we had to get to the hotel, I never run those tires before, and I was going to try to drive on them. Well, I didn't realize that night that with them aired down, they're a little wider, so when you turn, they'd rub, they would touch, right? So I freaked out, didn't know, and I didn't want to roach my new tires on the way to the hotel room. So John and I stayed, broke all the suspension down, swapped tires out, put it all back together. We got to the hotel room super late, and I stayed up till like almost 4 in the morning. It was like 3, almost 4 in the morning, editing my very first video, because I was like, I got to get these videos up, because I know a lot of people watch them, and I know you guys at home want to see them kind of in real time. So it was a goal, so I did it, and that basically kind of was the starting point for my sleep just gradually going away. So that was day 1. Day 2 was a drive day, right? So we did that. I edited my video. We felt good. We got an early start. I only had a few hours of sleep, but I didn't care because I was still riding high, and we're doing great. So we get in the car. The first 100 miles, I think it was a 250 or 60 mile trip, right? 100 miles, nothing. The car is great. Everything's great. And then we're going and going, and it just kept getting hotter and warmer. We should have probably left a bit earlier, but like I said, since I was up till like 4, I needed a little bit of sleep. In hindsight, we should have left really early. But anyway, it started getting hotter and hotter, and then finally we pulled in somewhere. My car really was overheating. I was keeping a good eye on it, but temps were all up on like everything, throughout the car. And I pulled over. I think we had like 60 miles to go, right? And I stopped at a light. And then I went to I just put it neutral to give the car a break, and I went to put it in gear, and usually it slams into gear. It made like a noise, and it didn't slam, and I took it out, and I put it back in, and it slid again. I'm like, oh, that's not good. And the car would still move, but it kind of felt sluggish. I was like, maybe it's just hot, maybe we're cooking stuff. I wasn't sure if my temperature gauge was reading properly, so we pulled it down, so we went to Walmart. And I started kind of freaking out. I'm like, dude, I don't think this thing's not good. Like, something is wrong. And I was like, oh, just adjust the band. It's probably getting hot. So I did a band adjustment, let it cool off a bit. And then, sure enough, like, we put it in gear, and it didn't do the sound. And it went into gear, and it was weak, but it went into gear. And I swear that last 50, 60 miles, like, at that point, what had ended up happening is we heard it. It made a noise at first, and then it did the deal. Well, that was when the bearing let go on the planetary, because it went, and then it kind of stopped. I'm like, self-clearancing must be good. Maybe it's just hot. Like, fingers crossed. So we ended up making it to the hotel room. Stuff was getting pretty hot or whatever. We just parked it. I'm like, good, dude. We're out of this thing. We went 200-something miles. We'll check it at the track. And I knew I could get on the portable lifts. So big shout out to portable lifts. So we just basically, Reed and Jeff had 0 problems on the road. They passed me like 4 times. They'd wave at me as they'd go by. Or maybe 2 or 3 times. I don't know how many times they passed me, but they would just speed by. Everybody would just speed by, and I was just trucking along 45, 50 because of the gearing and the small tire in my car. And before I left, I knew that the car drove slow, but I didn't care because I never really have a destination when I drive it around here, so I just truck around 40, 50 and stay on the side streets and stuff. Well, I didn't know the amount of space they were going to put in between each track, because if you kind of look it up and Google it, it's not that bad. I'm like, oh, we'll get that. Well, they add to the route, and you go the long way, you go around, and they really stretched the distances out, and it really made it tough for my car driving that slow. And it was a record heat wave that whole week. It was well over 100. So anyway, get to the track early. So this would be day 3. We would be in Pueblo. Put it up on the lift. First thing I do is I go to check pressure. So I'm like, I want to check pressure. I have 0 pressure in reverse. It still goes in reverse, but there's no pressure. It had pressure in the forward gears a bit. I don't even know what it was. I forget, because as soon as it said 0 in reverse, I'm like, we got to pull this thing out. So I was hoping I just melted some stuff, and I'm like, we got to pull it, check it. So I contacted Jake from Jake's Performance, because they said he had parts. So he said, yeah, I got to rebuild, and I have some parts, pull it apart. So we pull it all out, pull it apart. And the deal with the lift is if you're on the lift before competition starts, you can use it. And if competition starts while you're on it, you can stay on it. if competition starts and you roach your car, you can't put it on the lift. You got to do everything basically on the ground. So I knew that rule going into it, and we're on the lift. I was feeling good about it. We pull the transmission out. I'm still smiling. We're still good. You know, I'm like, we got parts here. We're cool. If this thing just needs a refresh, whatever. We pull it all apart, get it out, and I didn't get the reverse out. You know, we had a bunch of people kind of helping before the event started. And Jake comes over, and he was having a hard time with the tool that I brought, so he got his tool, pulled it out. I didn't even see what he was, you know, I didn't take a look at it, but everything else, we'd found that bearing on the planetary. So we're kind of looking at that and kind of freaking out, trying to get it off there. I'm like, dude, I'm going to have to clean this up, like machine it. So I'm trying to find a machine shop, and then Jake goes, hey, dude, you need a case. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, something broke in reverse. And it basically, so what it did is whatever broke, it shaved the case and put a bunch of aluminum into the pan, and then it sucked it up in the filter, and then it starved the transmission for fluid, so that's what roached that bearing. So it was like a, you know, cascading effect, and then obviously just trying to continually drive on the thing. And it never got super hot, but I think my gauge is a bit off, so it was one of those things. It was just a big compounded effect. Anyway, I got on the horn, and I'm like, man, I don't have money for a transmission, because I was like, can I buy one? Maybe somebody will have some stuff. And then people were looking up. There was somebody that had like a transmission power glide ready to go, and I forget how much money he wanted. I'm like, I was really debating, because like, I don't really have the cash. I'm like, I don't want to spend that. It's like the third day. That's way over out of my budget league, and then I still have to try to do the rest of this trip. So I was like, if I can't find a case, I'm probably just going to tap out, because I don't have the cash. I still got to get back home and have a life and pay bills, and I'm on a, you know, it was a stretch to get there anyway. Well, I found some transmission shop, and he said, no, call this guy, Better Rate Transmissions. And I already called that place. They didn't answer the phone. I called him back. He didn't answer again. I was looking around a few more spots, and I called back again, and then this older guy answered. I can just tell he was an older guy. And as soon as I kind of told him what I need, he said, yeah, I think I got something. Come on down. I was like, this guy, he's going to have it, because I could just tell. You know, it didn't sound like a busy shop. It sounded like some old guy. So sure enough, one of the road weakers was gracious enough to give me a ride. I just jumped in some dude's car, gave him some directions, and then my buddy Derek was there. I sent him with my planetary, and he went and found a machine shop. And I'm like, don't take anything off, just clean it up, because some of the bearing material was welded to the shaft. And so he did that, and I went to some shop, and then I had it on video here. It was Better Rate Transmissions. We looked through piles of transmissions. As soon as I walked in, I'm like, oh, thank you. I am in the right spot, because there's just piles of transmissions and old parts and stuff. And he came out with the bearing and the clip I needed, like on this piece of, you know, twine like metal. He's like, here's this. I'm like, I need this, and I need a case. So we start looking, and then he ends up finding a complete transmission instead of just a bare case. So we dig it out. Me and this other guy climb over like a bunch of transmissions, and we heave this thing out. It was like this cobweb, dirty, like shed-looking thing with a bunch of crap in there. And we put it on the bench, and we start talking, and he was like, you know, I was like, well, what do we get for this case if it's any good? He's like, I need $200. And I was like, man, and it was funny. I was looking at it, and I realized it was a 176 planetary, which those are hard to come by, and that's a good one that you want. They're put behind big blocks, and then they have a fatter shaft. So there's a different size bearing that goes on there. The planetary is different. So that was the bearing that I needed that I welded to my planetary. So he had one, but then I knew this had extra, and it had some stuff in it. I'm like, all right. So we opened it up, and I didn't really want to give him $200 for just a bare case, but I'm like, well, you got me, man. Like, I have to get it. So I didn't argue. I said, I'm okay with that if this thing's good. I just need to get back to racing. And I ended up basically breaking it down with the help of those guys there. I stole their tools and started doing it myself because I'm impatient, but they were really cool with me. And so we broke it all down, and I popped the pump off, and I started looking at the planetary, and I pulled the band. I think it was brand new. It was rebuilt. Like, I literally probably just could have taken that and stuffed it in my car and foot brake the rest of the race. So I was looking at the thing, and I'm like, you know, we're already here. So I'm going to break it down. I can take it, get it out of your hair. These guys get back to work. I said, what do you got to have to get, you know, the rest of the hard parts out of this thing? I said, the planetary and, you know, everything I could use for mine. So he looks at me after he already told me $200 for a bare case, and I was thinking he was going to hit me for something else, but I knew what the planetary was. What's up? What up, dude?
I figured a way how to do the tornado.
Okay, I'll be in a little bit, okay? Thanks, buddy. So I figured after he hit me for $200 for that he was just going to throw like another $200 or who knows, but it looked like a rebuilt planetary. It had some dots on it. Everything in there was indicative of this thing was basically rebuilt, maybe around a little bit, maybe not at all. And he had just been saving it. Maybe he bought a rebuilt, I don't know. But it's been sitting there, for a while, but it was good to go. He looks at me and he goes, you know what? give me another 40 bucks and you can have all the hard parts in there. And I was like, you are on. And then I also laughed because I just so happened to have a couple $100 that somebody had slid me that I put away, and I didn't know how much money it was, but it was $200 bills folded up to help me out at Rocky Mountain Race Week. And then I had gotten 40 bucks cash back because a lot of the smaller spots we were going to were kind of cash only. So I didn't have any money in my wallet besides a couple $100. So I had gotten 40 bucks cash back. So this guy, I don't know if he had x-ray vision, but he basically said the exact amount of cash in my wallet. And I turned around and I smiled and I said, you know, I'll give you that. I said, you got yourself a deal. I said, but I really feel like you've got x-ray vision because that is all the money I have in my wallet. I pulled my wallet out, I opened it up, and that was the exact amount. Like, he guessed it. If it was a guessing game, he won, and his prize was 240 bucks. So needless to say, that was pretty neat. Everything worked out. The universe really had taken care of me at that point. We got out of there. We got back to the racetrack, and then at that point, I'm like, man, I got Jake's from Jake's Performance here. I've got my case. We got the planetary cleaned up. Like, everything was good. I'm like, I just have to get this thing back together, make a hit. Racing started at 3. The track closed like 10 or 11. By this point, it was well past lunchtime racing and had almost started. Jake helped me kind of slam everything back together, and then like everybody ghosted like right at 3 because nobody could help me anymore. So there was a transmission pretty well put together. I had to finish that up, and then everybody from the portable car hoist and then a couple of the road weakers. Jim was really helpful, and we basically got the thing kind of put back together. They helped me. John was there with me the whole time, handing tools and stuff, and we stuffed it back in. And it was funny because I was still talking to people and being normal, and they'd come over, and my confidence was pretty high at that point because I'm like, we can put this together. I know it's good. I know we'll make a pass. And so I was just kind of talking smack and hanging out, and it was funny because I think people were like, man, you've been on the lift all day, and you're over there like talking and just kind of being normal, and you're putting a transmission in your car, and you still have to make passes. Well, sure enough, we get it off the thing at like dusk. It's got to be pretty late at this point. You know, sun's going down at summertime. And I put a tune in it, and we gave it a little more than what we had because of the elevation change. And I was kind of guessing. I asked Reed kind of what he ran and kind of got an idea because I know his car fairly well because I've been with him a lot, so I kind of know where he's putting his car. So I just went up to the track. I had made a pass. They just let me sneak in lanes. And we went up there, and I hit it, and the thing ran a 10.07 right off the lift. And it was like hitting a Grand Slam home run. I mean, everybody went nuts. I came back to the pits, and everybody was like, dude, to go through all that, you rebuild the thing, you put it on the track, and it runs the number. I mean, it was fantastic. And then, of course, at that point, I'm like, oh, I could do a flat 10. I went back and did one more pass, and it actually ran slower. I think I ran against Reed, and then things slowed down a little bit. But at that point, I'm like, cool, whatever, I don't care, we'll just turn this in. So I think I was still in 3rd place at that point. So we've been through all of that, rebuilt the transmission, hung out, stayed in 3rd place. So at this point, I'm just like on fire. It was great. So then the next day, we had to drive up to Bandimere. So we went from Pueblo to Bandimere. It's not quite as far, but you're driving up in the mountains. We got an early start for that one. I put the video up. Everything was cool. And we started off, go to Bandimere. At this point, I had Jim finally following me. He's one of the road weakers, which was really nice because I was hoping a caravan, like you see the pictures and everybody's traveling together. Well, turns out when your car goes 50 miles an hour, nobody wants to caravan with you because they don't want to take all day. They want to get on with the show on the road. So basically, it was just myself and my co-pilot, John, just cruising very slow, watching everybody pass us. If they left early, we never really saw many people, and we were probably one of the last ones, if not, people having actual problems. But everybody that ran and drove, they all beat us there. So that was really nerve-wracking for me, driving on a transmission that wasn't all, I didn't know it was 100 at that point. We'd rebuilt it, and I felt good about it, but not having anybody around, not having cell service. And I have a trailer, and I have parts in there. I mean, I get it, but there are certain situations, the thing just shut down, or we needed help, or, it's really nerve-wracking because you're like, dude, you're relying on yourself. You better MacGyver some stuff, and you better have some stuff in your trailer because if stuff hits a fan, it's you and your buddy, and hopefully you work it out. So, long story short, another hot day. We drove up to Bandimere, didn't have a hitch. We got to the very tippy top of one of the climbs. The car hit like 215. That was the hottest the car ever had gotten, and it was just a climb the whole time, and then it got real steep. Right where it crested, the car touched 215 and then cooled immediately off. So, That radiator's worked phenomenal, aside from the fact I've got an air-to-air in front of it. But even then, it still wasn't bad at all. I mean, if that air-to-air, I really feel like if we switch the program up to water-to-air and we take the blockage off that radiator, I feel like I can drive that car up a wall towing stuff and it ain't gonna budge. So we're gonna find out, because that thing, that Champion radiator really put in work. And there's no way I would have made it with my old setup, because just driving the Champion with the old setup, it was getting hot. So I'm so glad that they got on board, even though it was kind of later in the program. It really saved me a lot of headaches. So we get to Bandimere, same thing, put it straight on the lift. I have a leak that started. So we get underneath, wipe everything up, find some loose stuff. Like, oh, it's just a couple of things that we didn't tighten or whatever. Got everything all tightened up, and then it was hot. And everybody started talking about the drive. So the drive the next day from the Rocky Mountains up in Bandimere, they were saying there's a couple different directions, but they were kind of getting rumored that we were going to go into the mountains. Instead of turning around going down the mountain that we just drove up, that they were going to send us even further up the mountains and then back down to Kearney, Nebraska, which is on the flat ground. So I started like kind of having anxiety, because I'm like, dude, like we just got here, everything was cool, but you're going to make us drive even more up a mountain, and then like another, it was like a 500-mile trek or something. And I'm like, man, like the 300 from Pueblo is where I smoked my transmission. So at this point, my anxiety kind of kicked in. I'm like, dude, and I wasn't worried about the track, I was worried about the drive, because the car just wasn't really happy on the drive. So I'm like, I'm just going to give this thing the beans, you know, as far as I want to give it here, because we're at elevation. And then hopefully we're somewhere in the 10s, and then life will be good, right? And then we can just one and done. We'll go home and get sleep, and we'll get a really early jump. So run down. Oh, I waited. That was my other strategic move, is I waited, right? So they called 10-0 class multiple times, but it was hot. And I was like, I just want to one and done it. We'll wait till the air gets a bit better. So by the time I'm like, okay, it's decent enough, let me go down and get a run, they won't let me run, because they're like, no, we didn't call you. You got to wait for us to call you. And like, I haven't made a run all day. Like, they don't know if I'm broken and working on my stuff, and now you're going to make me wait if, you know. And I was like, show them my punch card. And the guy was like, nope. And I'm like, oh, man. So then I had to tune in it for kind of what the temperature was. And then they made me wait maybe like another hour or something, half an hour. It felt like an hour. Who knows? I'm going to say at least 45 minutes, right? So then it started kind of cooling off because the sun started going down. So now it's already kind of getting late in the day, and I haven't made a single hit. And then he called me up to go, and I kind of thought about it. I'm like, I'm just going to hit it with what the tune we left in it. So we get down, go to the track, we make our pass, and the freaking car runs a 986 at 136 miles an hour, popping on the rev limit at the big end. And I was like, we're at 6,000 elevation. I forget what the DA is. It was crazy. And everybody was struggling trying to hit numbers. And here I go, and I blow my stuff out of the water, and I'm a 10th off of my like record pass of 985 at Great Bend. And I was super bummed. Like, car went super fast. Everything was awesome. And I'm like, I have to run it again. So then I wrap my head around. I'm like, okay, it's just one more. We'll just turn it down a little bit. So I turned it down a little bit. And then we go to line up, and I'm lined up with Kyle from 1320 Video. He happens to be in my class. He happens to be right below me points-wise. And then I was getting excited because I'm like, I got this, dude. I was like, I turned it down just enough. I was like, I think we can go flat 10. And I get to run next to Kyle on 1320 Video. This is going to be phenomenal. I'm like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to pull his ticket. This is going to be rad. I want a flat 10 right next to Kyle. And get up and do the burnout. And then the thing just starts feeling weird. And I put it in gear, and I went to put it in gear, and it felt like it blocked in the trans brake. And I put it high, and then it rolled forward, and I was getting a little bit of gas, but it just didn't feel right, and it wasn't right. Like, it wasn't going into gear. And they're pulling him up, and they're always like, come on, come on. And I just made the decision right there. I'm like, you know what? Something's wrong with this. And I almost put it high and just ran it in high. But I'm like, if I do that, something's off. I'm just going to melt this thing. So I just called it, and if you're watching live feed, that's when they told me off. And I wasn't 100% sure. But I really felt, I was like, something's off, like it's not going into gear, it's weird. And then it started kind of clicking, sounded like the parking paw or something was off. And I'm like, man, I think I wrote reverse or something, I didn't know. So we tow it back, the sun's already going down, and then I have to make a decision. So we're crawling underneath it. I can't use the lift unless I turn my slip in, because I'm still in competition, and I'm in third place at this point. So, you know, I'm thinking about the drive, my thing's not going into gear, the sun's already going down. I'm like, man, I don't have a choice, because unless it was an easy fix and I can do it right now and make another hit, I still have to go under 10 to be in competition. So I realized I'm basically out of competition. Now I just need to be able to make the drive. So I turn my slip in, and if you go too fast, they give you a 20-second time slip. So I was really bummed. So I basically went the second fastest my car's ever gone. We did it at elevation, so the car was boogieing. And I have to turn a slip in and basically get in last position, and now my only goal is to finish the race. So I was pretty bummed. We put it up on the lift, and at that point I'm kind of relaxing, and we dropped the pan, and it turns out the little arm wasn't tightened all the way, and it just slid out, and it didn't go into gear correctly. So had I sent it like that, it would have smoked the clutches and probably steels or whatever they're in there, or who knows what other damage it may or may not have done. So it was a good call for me not to run. But it was really heartbreaking because at that point, we're at the third track, and I already know that I lost the whole deal going from third to loser. But that's racing, man. And especially this event, you could be first, and you could be out if you can't break those beams at the last track. So I get it, man. And we put the arm back in, and it seemed like it wasn't getting pressure, but I think it's just because it's low on fluid. And then finally, we put a bunch of fluids, and I put it in reverse, and the thing clicked into gear. I haven't checked pressures on the thing since. And I figured, well, at the next track, we'll put it on the trans brake, and it's either going to hold or not. So it's either making enough pressure or it's not. So we drove to the hotel room, and then we got back to the hotel room, and then I talked to John, and I said, well, we're basically out of contention. It was already late at this point because we had another night up on the lift. I hadn't slept for, I don't know how many days, like barely a few hours, and we had like a 500-mile drive through the Rocky Mountains the next day. So I'm like, let's just sleep in. We'll probably be the last ones to leave. We're going to have to drive midday heat, but we either don't sleep and we do that sleep deprived, or we get a little extra sleep and we just take our time and just make it a full event. So that's what we did. I'm glad we did that. But then that drive, I ended up being we were in the car for 21 hours. We stopped at pretty much every gas station. By this point, the car was under pressure. It would leak good. When it would sit, it would just dribble a little bit, and then it was done. So there was some sort of seal. I think it's a pump seal or something. I don't know which one it is. But like the car will sit there, it doesn't leak a drop. But once you drive it and you get it under load, it would drip. And you do that for 500 miles, and it just paints everything under there. So we're driving. It is hot as all get out. Like I said, it was a 21-hour drive straight through. And then the most interesting thing, the two things that happened to us on that whole trip, because it was pretty smooth. We stopped at Walmart to change oil because the oil was breaking down and I was losing pressure because it was hot and it was just thinning everything out. So we gave the car a break, changed the oil pressure in a Walmart parking lot. Changed the oil pressure, changed the oil in a Walmart parking lot. And then at one stretch, we were kind of running low on fuel, kind of almost out, but I had 10 gallons of 91 in the tanks that I brought. So what happens when the fuel gets low, the fuel pumps get angry because the fuel helps cool them. So I was trying to go to like pretty well every gas station, just top off because you're getting cool fuel from underground, and then it circulates and it kind of makes everything happy again and you get back on the road. So everything was getting angry. We were running out of fuel, and I pulled over, and there's this road. It just goes. There's nothing. It was in Nebraska because we were going to Kearney. And there was a silo and a tree and an outbuilding behind the tree, like a big tree, right? So I was like, dude, I'm just going to pull over and we'll shut the car off and sit under the tree because there was no shade. It was blazing hot. It was afternoon, not too late afternoon, but I don't know, maybe 2 o'clock or so, give or take. So we pull over. We finish topping up, check all the fluids. We're just letting the car give a break. And some European guy rolls up and starts talking to us, real thick accent. I don't know if it was German or where he was from. But he was a nice gentleman, but it was a little odd because there's like no other cars, and it was just him. And he was like kind of a newer car. And he was kind of being a little odd, and we're like, "Did you like gonna roll us or what?" Like, I don't have anything. I got a hot rod in the middle of nowhere. Well, it turns out the guy needs fuel. He's out of fuel in his hybrid thing, and he was looking for the interstate. I have no idea why he was driving around. Maybe he was burying a body, who knows? But he was like, I'm almost out of gas, and I'm afraid to leave this stretch of road and then go. He's like, there's nothing. And he's like, I keep, everybody I've seen, I've asked if they had fuel, and nobody had fuel. So he sees we have gas tanks, and I'm like, man, I just put all the fuel I had in. Well, it turns out I topped the tank like all the way up, and I had like this much in one of my jugs left. And I'm like, hey, I've got this. I said, it's probably not a gallon, but it's probably at least a half gallon or so. And I was like, you're welcome to it. And he was like over the moon excited for a half gallon of fuel. And I told him, I said, yeah, that's why we topped out, because there's nothing between here and wherever it was. And there's enough fuel in the tank for us to make it to the next spot from there. But so we gave him that, and he was trying to give us like euros and stuff. And I almost wanted a euro because I've never seen one just to have one, like hang it up. But I'm like, you know what? This guy's in distress. I'm not going to take his euro, even if it was $1 or whatever, because the whole point was to be nice and help the gentleman. Plus, I really needed the karma. considering how my trip had been so far. So I didn't take any money, I didn't take anything. We gave him the fuel for free of charge, but it was funny because he had the Euros, and I was like, oh, I almost wanted to just see one, but I was like, you know, man, I don't need keepsakes. Like, you take it, you keep your money, you get home safe. So we did that, and just as soon as we're about to leave, a car comes coasting in behind us, and we could see it had a trailer, and we're like, oh, it's other race weekers. Well, it turns out it's our friends, the Rotary boys. My buddy Mike with the Rotary, he was all over 1320. He was in the stick shift class, he was doing really well, and he's the first Rotary to ever finish Rocky Mountain Race Week, from what I understand. Well, he came rolling in hot, and the car was shut off because the thing shut itself off, and it was just not a happy camper. So we got to talking to those guys, and then a fun fact, when we saw those guys on the very first day, they were rolling with no exhaust. If you know a Rotary, you know the Rotaries are loud, and it's like blah, 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 blah. It's basically a two-stroke, and it has these little, they call them Doritos, but it's a little tri-rotor deal. And that's how they make power. Anyway, he rolled in the first day, and it was loud, and I was like, man, I don't want to get stuck on the road next to that car. I said, I don't even want to drive next to that thing. It's so loud. I was like, I put a muffler on my car so I didn't have to, like, hear something like that for hours on end. Well, of all people, they come rolling in, coasting in. Coolest guys ever. I even told them the story. I said, I laughed because I'm like, of all people, you had to come pulling in, you know, and I made fun of it on the first day because I'm like, oh, who'd want to listen to that car? So it turns out they could only go about 45, 50 miles an hour. We could only drive about 45, 50 miles an hour. We had a good solid half day's worth of trek to go. So we let the car cool off. He triple checked all his stuff, and then we started motoring on with them, which was really nice to finally be in like a caravan in case there was a real situation. And lo and behold, maybe an hour away from that, I kind of started smelling fuel, and I'm like, man, my car. And I look up, and he loses a line, and there's a hose just going, and it's just raining fuel. Well, his fuel pump line busted, and it pumped majority of his fuel onto the road we were traveling on. And mind you, I just told you that we put all the fuel we had in our car because there's nowhere in between where we were and the next gas station, like over 100 miles out or something like that. And he just pumped majority of his tank onto the road we were on, let alone he was leaking more, so we pulled over, got it all pinched off. He was kind of freaking out, but they ended up having some fuel on board, and we were able to save what he had left in the tank. But man, a 4303 wide open pumped some fuel, and he had a big line. It had to be dash 8, maybe dash 10. It damn near emptied that tank right there. I mean, in the 100 yards, it was crazy. And we pushed his car out of the puddle of fuel, so obviously we didn't start any fires or anything and let it evaporate, but pretty sketchy. And it was one of those things that it worked out. That's why you want to be in a caravan, because if it was just him and his buddy, he still would have got it done. He was great. You know, they basically had it handled, but you know, we just kind of talked him through it, talked his nerve down, held the light. It got dark real quick right about then. They didn't have enough hands and flashlights and stuff to really get what they needed done. They would have made it work, but it would have been probably a bit more stressful than it was. And I could tell he was right there with me. We were at 11 stress. Then after that, we got everything buttoned up. Sun went down, cars ran cool, and I was like, man, we could drive like that all day. So basically just drove all the way through. It's boring because you can't see the sights, but the car was happy. We made it, got E85, the whole thing, so we were good. But that was a 21-hour stretch. I got in at 4 in the morning. We left at 7 the previous morning, and I was freaking zonked. So that was the long drive to Kearney. We got up the next day, another record heat wave at Kearney, ridiculously hot. And I had told John, I said, we're going to go to Kearney. As soon as they call us to lanes, I'll go to lanes, and we'll just hit one and done. I'll just put a tune-up in it. Anything in the 10s, I said, we'll just take it. We're out of contention. We could both use the sleep. I said, you deserve it because you've been sticking it out with me. And I was like, I know that I need it. So went to Kearney. They called us to lanes. We lined up. I spun a bunch, had to pedal twice. I ran a 1070 and went over and turned that in, went straight to the hotel room and went to bed. And the last day was the drive from Kearney back to Great Bend. They sent us out of the way. It was a few-hour drive. That one took us 6 or 8 hours. I forget how many miles it was, but it was pretty ridiculous. Drove straight to the track. We laid underneath the car again, mopped it all up, and you know, had a good time, talked to people, had some rest. It was the last day. The car was there. I knew I could at least break beams. I figured we'd make a pass. We cleaned it up. It looked good. You know, we idled it and drove it, but like I said, when you drive it under load, the fluid would heat up and thin out, and it would just drip, and it got everywhere. So we cleaned it up really well, and I clicked off at 10:08, one and done. And I was going to go back and maybe hit it again and turn the car up and see what it'd do. But I was like, you know what, at this point, I really would like to take a running car home. There's nothing to prove. There's plenty of fast guys there. I'd already run a personal best and backed it up at elevation, so we just called it a day. And I left, you know, a winner because I finished and because I didn't quit. And then even when I knew I was out of contention, it's still about finishing, putting in the grueling effort. I mean, technically I didn't have to drive that 21-hour drive. I didn't have to do any of it after basically I turned that slip in. We could have just turned around and drove back home and called it a day, but it's about going and see if you could finish, being a part of something. And, you know, I had no idea what to expect. I figured if you drove from track to track, if you kind of Google, the distance is not that bad. They do not send you straight to the track. They send you all willy-nilly. You drive all over. You go through little towns. I met a bunch of great people. Every kid I saw, I passed out stickers. I had a bunch of kids sitting in the car, bunch of adults. I mean, we go to gas stations. Everybody wanted to talk. It was really cool. My anxiety was really high. A lot of the drive portion because we weren't caravanning, so I'm going to change that next year. I'm going to get more gear in the car, and I'm also going to find some people that would like to caravan, and I'll get a running speed here before I leave, so I'll know how fast the car runs, and I'll say, I can run between this and this. You know, if you guys can do that, you're comfortable, cool. If not, we'll find some people that run a bit slower, like my buddy Mike with the rotary. I was like, next year, bro, we're just going to caravan this whole thing, and my car's still sluggish, or even if it's not, just because I know it sucks to be in a situation where you can't go fast, I'd rather just hang out and make sure to get there safe, or, you know. Everybody was like, oh, if anything happens, give me a call. Well, cell phone service 9 times out of 10 did not work. Like in some of the major spots it would, but you'd get out in stretches. You'd figure that the cell phone service would just cruise across the plains, but it doesn't. It just drops out and there's nothing there. Like no towers, no nothing. So, well, the camera is shutting off. Memory card's getting full. That means that it's time for me to quit talking. But let's wrap it up and summarize what we got going and what we thought. I think it is definitely the hardest drag and drive event in the world, probably. I mean, I'll just go ahead and say that. We are definitely going back next year. The things that I'm going to get in a row are, I'm going to get my safety together so we can run a little quicker. I'm probably going to stay in the hot rod class next year so all of my runs count. So if I get my safety in order, we can run somewhere in the 9s and I can turn those slips in and feel good about going fast instead of being bummed because I went too fast and basically knock myself out of contention. So no more index stuff. I just want to run what I brung, hope I brought enough. We're going to go for that next year. And then I need to make it better on the drive portion as well. So I feel like the car was pretty quick for the most part. Very happy with the power and performance at the track. Very not happy with the grueling long road trips in the heat and all that fun stuff. But again, you want to drive a fast car on the street and that's part of it. So we're going to sort those things out. I feel like I made some friends that I'm going to keep in touch with. Definitely going to keep in touch with the Rocky Mountain Race Week community. And we're going to try to bring it back next year. We got to pay this trip off. We'll make some adjustments and changes to the car. I'll keep you guys posted on that. First and foremost, so we're going to freshen up the motor with new bearings, double check everything in there, make sure it's decent. And then I got to put the bell housing and reseal this transmission so it works. And we'll take a peek at that as well. So my plan is to take a little break, save up some pennies, reseal and refresh the motor, put it all back together, and then I want to work on suspension, 60-foot hits, lots of local stuff. Duct tape drags is next. So we're going to do all of those things, get the car back in fighting shape. We'll be back next year, Rocky Mountain Race Week 2022. We're going to try to bring a little bit better program, same car, hopefully a little faster, a little wiser. I feel like we learned a lot, and it's one of those events. You just want to bring the best car you got, and you'll find all the weak links real quick when you get there, and you'll find the things like you think you drive it around. You know, I was like, oh, I drive my car. I don't drive as much as my buddy Reed drove his. He was driving to Arizona and Nevada and all over, so I realized too that I need to get in my car and basically do essentially what he is doing because he didn't really have any problems on the road, which was really cool. He just needs to turn the wick up or figure that car out because out here, it's a pretty fast car, but you get out there and you get an elevation and stuff just doesn't like it, and you got to bring even more than what you bring, especially out where we live. So hopefully he comes back next year, and I'll be back for sure. Hopefully we make more friends. We have a caravan. We do better. We keep it one piece. We don't struggle so hard, and if we do, hopefully we overcome. And you guys follow along and you enjoy it. So thank you for watching, following along. Thank you to everybody, all the new fans and friends and followers I've met. And everybody that is old and has been with me and backed me since day one, thank you guys very much. Couldn't do any of this stuff without all of you guys. So that is it. Until next time, you know what to do. Keep it locked. I'm out.